But when you look at the actual data for 2023, total property taxes went up by $165 million. It's correct that school property taxes went down a little over $4 billion, but cities, counties, and special purpose districts, they all increased their spending and raised property taxes, so total property taxes went up. So while some people with a homestead will see their property tax bill go down, Hello, welcome to this week's Economy. I'm your host, Dr. Vance Ginn. Thank you for joining me again today. Well, this is episode 46 on February 2nd. We're already into February now. Can you believe it? It's already here. So let's get right to all of the information and important details that I have for you today, what's going on in the economy and what you need to know. We need to be in the know. So I hope I'm providing value to you. So the first thing I want to mention is that the latest information about the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, the inflationary measure that's out there, was reported recently. And now we have a good idea of what happened in 2023 when we look at average weekly earnings. I think that's the best measure to use, not average hourly earnings, because look, I can get paid a certain amount per hour, but if I'm only working 20 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, I'm not going to have as much income to bring home at the end of that week to buy things. And so if you're only looking at the hourly amount, that's not telling you the whole picture about how much people are working. So what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does is they look at average hourly earnings, they look at average hours worked, and then multiply those two together. What do you have? Average weekly earnings. And so this takes into account not only your wages, but other types of benefits that you receive while working. So I just think it's a better measure overall. And when you look at that and you adjust it for this PCE index, this Personal Consumption Expenditures Index for inflation, it's actually down slightly in 2022 and even in 2023. So there's some talk by the Biden administration that wages are up, and they are. Average weekly earnings are up and a nominal amount, but when you adjust it for inflation because of all the costs that are going up, we're still feeling poorer in the process, which is one reason why I think a lot of people feel so poorly about the economy, and they really see a lot of pressures that are on them to keep up with food and groceries and everything else. Also, if you adjust it for the Consumer Price Index, which is what most people know about, the CPI, it still was down in for the year of 2023 and 2022. So back-to-back years of declining real average weekly earnings. Not a good situation for many of them. I'll make sure to put a chart of that under the paywall. Remember, subscribe today to my Substack newsletter at vanceginn.substack.com, where you can get all this information and a lot more. I had a poll up on X, formerly known as Twitter, recently, where the question was, what would you recommend that the federal government do to deal with the $34 trillion national debt? As I've noted many times, this is the biggest national crisis that we have right now because it influences so much of our economy with interest rates, exchange rates, and a lot more. There were 161 people that voted, so keep that in mind. But 85% said cut government spending. Yay, I'm right there with you. 10% said cut taxes, 3% said raise taxes, boo, and 2% said raise spending, boo. So 5%, right, said raise taxes or raise spending. Those would certainly not help the situation. Some said cut taxes. That could provide more in economic growth that could help with the debt over time. But really, it's about cutting government spending, or at least reining in the growth rate with a sustainable budget model of a spending limit, right, based on population growth plus inflation. And then you get more economic growth and everything else in the process. So thought that was really interesting there. There's been a lot of talk, Southern news out there. There's a lot of talk about the national conservatives. One who's touted this a lot has been Oren Cass. He's the head of American Compass. Good guy overall. I think he gets a lot of the problems correct when in his book, The Once and Future Worker, and some of his other work that he does at American Compass. So nothing against him at all. But the issue is that I have with is some of his policy initiatives and what he calls the other side market fundamentalist. I guess I would be considered by him a market fundamentalist. I don't really know what that means. It's a subjective determination. And while he gets some of this right, in the problems that are out there, so much of his solutions are not right, because he overlooks that the root problem is government failures, right? Too much government in a lot of these markets, and his solutions are usually more government to come in, expanding trade unions, having a higher minimum wage, protectionism on trade issues, one thing after another, which are not providing more economic growth and prosperity for people in the process. When you really need to look at is what are the costs that are being made by government that are creating whatever the economic situation is on income inequality. Is that the Federal Reserve or some of our tax situations? When you look at trade, is that because we have too high of taxes already in the United States and too high of regulations that are forcing them to go elsewhere? Those are the things that we need to look at first. I have a problem with him saying market fundamentalist. I'm also like, where's this market fundamentalism been? I mean, we had some of it during the Reagan administration. There was a lot of talk about it, but they continue to increase government spending. Trump administration has a good deregulation, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but government spending kept going up. There's been need to be a push to reduce government spending, reduce some of these programs, and cut a lot of these programs and eliminate them where they can. That's how you would see a market, quote unquote, market fundamentalist. And the other issue is that there's a lot of judgment going on about the other side whenever they have, when they have just as much judgment on everyone else. Why is that? I don't know, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I'm hopeful that we can have more of these discussions because it's really needed. I've joined the Freedom Conservatives. You can check that out at Freedom Conservatism. You just go online and have a Substack, good information. I was one of the original signers there, and I think they have a lot of it right when it comes to not only addressing the problems, but also the trade-offs that are given from these solutions, because we don't need to double down on government failures in the process. So anyway, I just think that we need more of that discussion going on. In state news, I recently released a report by the Texans for Fiscal Responsibility highlighting the latest property tax data from the Texas Comptroller's Office, showing how the legislature's property tax relief last session was the second largest in state history, despite what some have been claiming. They've been claiming it's the largest in state history, the largest in the world. There's been a whole bunch of things that have been claimed, but when you look at the actual data for 2023, total property taxes went up by $165 million. It's correct that school property taxes went down a little over $4 billion, but cities, counties, and special purpose districts, they all increased their spending and raised property taxes, so total property taxes went up. So while some people with a homestead will see their property tax bill go down, a lot of them will see it go up, and renters and businesses and those without a homestead will see theirs go up tremendously because there wasn't anything done to those. And I'm for eliminating property taxes across the board by using surplus dollars at the state level and the local levels by limiting government spending, and they didn't do that last session as they spent too much. So I think a lot of this goes on the local governments because they spend too much, but at the same time, the state legislature and leaders could have done more to bring down property taxes by not spending as much. So hopefully next session in 2025, they'll use the research that I've been doing and others have been doing. I was already talking about this, that there was going to be the second largest property tax relief in history back in July when they passed it. And now it's coming true whenever this data is out there. So we need a different approach. In other news, my research on the Responsible Louisiana Budget was released by the Pelican Institute. This goes along with the Pelican Citizens Guide to the Budget. These provide a roadmap to fiscal sustainability in Louisiana. This is needed more than ever because employment has declined for 7 straight months in Louisiana, and people keep leaving the state. They're the 6th most as a percent net out migration from Louisiana. They've got to get their fiscal house in order, and then that will help with regulation and school choice and everything else to really allow for people to want to stay in Louisiana, as that is the master resource is people. If you have people leave, you can't have growth in the economy and things of that nature. So there's a lot that needs to be done there. Don't miss out on the links in my show notes page. My commentary at Complete Colorado calls on Governor Polis to do as he promised and reduce tax expenditures. A good report by Ben Murray from the Independence Institute talking about this, but this will provide more opportunity to cut income taxes, which is what we need to be doing. And what Polis even had promised that he was going to do is cut these tax expenditures and then cut income taxes. Let's go ahead and do that. That would be a good thing. This also needs to include less government spending, as if you have a surplus, you can keep buying down income taxes until they're zero. That should be the approach in Colorado to stay competitive and provide more opportunities for human flourishing. I had a recent paper on that, the Sustainable Colorado Budget, that you'll want to check out as well. Other updates, I was quoted at Forbes about how opponents of school choice in Texas face primary challengers. My point here was that Texas could have universal education savings accounts and save at least $13 billion per year, but too many want to grow the budget. And a lot of people just don't want school choice in rural areas, and then they're going to get hit hard, I think, in the primaries and the general election, because this is what parents want. They want choices for their kids of where they're going to be educated, and these people need to get out of the way because that's not the future of the state. And by the way, it can save taxpayers money in the process and cut or eliminate property taxes at the end of the day. And then that way we have a more flourishing economy and better education results, because right now this monopoly government school system is not providing good outcomes. I was recently accepted to be a 2024 Club for Growth Foundation Fellow. I'm excited about that. It's a great group group overall. Hopefully you'll learn a lot. And so I'll give you some updates as we go, but I'm excited about that fellowship. In other news, I was on multiple radio shows this week and quoted at the Texan. Other shows were on the Chad Hasty program where I talked about the property tax issues in Texas. I was on with Jimmy Barrett and Sheriff Fryer on KTR's News in Houston talking about that. And I was also on a program in Louisiana, the Ross Report with Carol Ross, talking about Louisiana's economy and the issues that need to be done this session there. Last week's episode, Let People Prosper episodes with Dr. Bruce Caldwell on Frederick Hayek, including his upbringing, economics, and much more. Don't miss that one. The upcoming LPP episode on Monday is with Dr. Brian Kaplan. We had a great conversation on open borders, reason to have more kids, and into education, and more. I just want to let you know you might be triggered in this one, but that can be a good thing. We've got to press ourselves sometimes in our thinking. And so the quote of the week I have is by economist Loed von Mises. It says, "There is no more dangerous menace to civilization than a government of an incompetent, corrupt, or vile men. The worst evils which mankind has ever had to endure were inflicted by bad governments." So true. There are a lot of great politicians that are out there, but unfortunately, when you get them all together, oftentimes something bad comes up. What we need to do is have government get it back in its place and preserve liberty instead of trying to infiltrate our lives and socially engineer things in the process, because that doesn't work. And finally, like I like to do every week, is end with a Bible verse. It's Matthew 7:1-2. "In the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use it will be measured to you." Let's not judge others. Let's understand each other, talk to one another more cordially, and get to a better place overall by the word, reading the Bible, and things of that nature. And I think we'll be in a much better situation at the end of the day. Until next time, God bless you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.